In the basement of La Penta, this is WICR.
Well, it is that time again. Welcome back, finally, to the Sports Vault. I am your host with the most, Jersey Joe Archino, here with the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Big Shot Rob Buncardo. Rob, 3 weeks in, the Sports Vault is finally back. Why did it take so long, Rob? The fans want to know.
I was at the U.S. Open, Joe. Exciting 2 weeks. I definitely miss my Sports Vault family, Joe, being here with you. But now I'm proud to be back.
Of course, and we will get into that tennis a little bit later. Rob, I like to call you our insider. We're all about having insiders on the show, whether it's on the phone or in the show every day. And we certainly have one with Big Shot Rob, but there's really not a better place to start right now than in the National Football League with everything that happened. Obviously, Rob, we got to keep it local. We'll start with the Giants and the Jets. Give us your status report. Week 1 for the Jets. You get a victory. Antonio Cromartie goes down. He's out of that game. What do you assess it? How do you sum it up?
The game was awesome. Our defense is finally back to the way it should be. I mean, you lose Rex Ryan, you get Todd Bowles, you get what was expected, what he did with Arizona. The secondary looked really great. One thing I really enjoyed with the Jets this week was very hard hits all the time, hitting people nonstop. Ryan Fitzpatrick looked great, was gunning the ball, Joe. And finally, for the first time since the 90s, we have the number 1 wideout, Brandon Marshall, and he did work this week. Our running game is back to usual. Chris Ivory with 2 touchdowns and 91 yards. And this Jets team, guys, be aware. Be aware in the AFC East.
I mean, that's the thing I really like is how the ball distribution worked for everybody. I mean, you had Brandon Marshall getting a touchdown. You had Eric Decker getting a touchdown. Chris Ivory had his touchdowns. I think that's what you want to see, and that's why I really like Ryan Fitzpatrick, because I think he understands you got to distribute the ball evenly, you got to utilize the depth that you have, because that's something the Jets have not had on offense in a long time, depth at the offensive position. I mean, they have a lot of good, talented playmakers now. You just got to find a way to get them the ball and distribute it evenly, and that's something I certainly think that they did. Moving ahead a little bit, Rob, obviously, you got a lot of confidence. It's against the Cleveland Browns, but again, you come out, your offense shows capabilities. Your defense, I mean, really gets out after the quarterback. The Indianapolis Colts dropped their first game on the road against the Bills. How much confidence did the Jets take into their game on Monday night against this same Colts team?
Oh, they're taking a lot, Joe, of confidence. I think the Colts better be aware because Andrew Luck, we already saw the beating he took versus the Bills. Very tough beating. Look at the Jets, though, now. The Jets have a tougher secondary than the Bills. They have a great defensive line. Andrew Luck is going to be rushed the whole game, so I think the Colts might actually be losing this Monday night game.
You know, it's... You know the way I feel about the Colts. I still think that roster is not in that prime position to win a Super Bowl. Obviously, Andrew Luck is a special, supreme talent, but I still think there's a lot of question marks there. And this is a nice test right off the bat for the Jets. I think you wanted to see them come out of the gate against the Browns and do their job. They had to do that have that kind of performance against the Jets against the Browns, because the Browns are not a good football team. That's the way that they should be playing. That's what they should be doing. Now when you get to the Colts, this is a team that's obviously in that prime position, that has some weaknesses, that are dying for a win as well. But it seems like all good on the Jets front as of now.
And you have to leave out, Joe, T.Y. Hilton's out for the Colts.
Yes.
With his knee injury. So that's a big killer if the Colts are going to be relying on Andre Johnson in the running game.
And let's be honest, this is a team that, as it is, doesn't have the greatest depth on the offensive position. I mean, you're really relying on Andre Johnson, who I love, but again, is up there in age. Frank Gore, but a lot of miles on his tires. He's an older player. Dwayne Allen, some of the other guys. I don't know if you have that one dependable guy you can always count on with them. When we move across to the other side of New York, though, Rob, clearly a heartbreaker. As heartbreaking an opener as you could kind of hope for the New York Giants. Now, I've already talked a lot about it. My kind of feeling is look, it's 3rd and 1 on the goal line. Obviously, you have to run the ball. Is Coughlin to blame here? Is Eli to blame here? I think they both share the blame. Coughlin was right. He should have ran the ball. Eli was right. He had to take the sack there. How do you look at it, though?
I look at that as typical Giant football, miscommunications, Joe. That's been the problem the last couple of years with them when it comes to games versus the Cowboys. And we look at that situation, you know what, yeah, blame it on Coughlin, but also blame it on Manning, a veteran quarterback who should have known at that moment what to do with the ball. He even said earlier this week about Rashad Jennings. He told Rashad Jennings not to run for a touchdown on that possession. Should have went with running in for the touchdown, going up by 10. They really messed it up down the stretch, and that's a real big heartbreaking loss, especially versus the Cowboys. You don't want to let the Cowboys get off to a hot start. You guys start winning these games in the NFC East because it's the toughest division.
No doubt about it. I mean, I think one of the frustrating things about it is I think before that, if you looked at that performance, there's a lot of good things you could take away from the Giants because I think for them, I mean, look, the Jets came in, I think, with a little bit different expectations. They came in with a lot more positives, I think, than the Giants. I think the Giants had a little bit more uncertainty. How was the defense going to look, especially with this young secondary, no Jason Pierre-Paul? How was the offense going to look? And I think when you look at this game, they certainly showed on the defensive side a good capability. The only times they got into trouble is when they switched to that prevent defense and the Cowboys just went right down the field. But I think for the most part, you could walk away from this one with a lot of positives. It's just that bad clock management, like you said, it's something that there's no time for you. You have to be sharper than that, and I think that they will. When we move ahead for them a little bit, they've got Atlanta on Sunday, and then they've got Washington on Thursday. Now, I know it's painful losing this game against the Cowboys, especially because of who it is, but I really think, look, if you're the Giants, you could really go 2-1. I think the next two games are very winnable.
Joe, I'm actually sticking with the Falcons versus the Giants.
They did look pretty sharp. We will get to those Monday night games, but they did look sharp on Monday night.
I just feel Matt Ryan, the Giants secondary looked good in this first game, but I don't know how they're going to go against Julio Jones, who was on fire on Monday Night Football versus the Eagles. Guy burned it last night, and I mean, if they can't stop him, Matt Ryan's going to have a nice field day on this team.
There's no question. It's funny because when I was doing my prep this morning for the show, I think that was one of the biggest things that you asked is, my goodness, are the Giants going to be able to stop Julio Jones? And that's the interesting thing because I think when you look at the collective Giants secondary, it's two vets and it's two young guys, and it's a lot of young guys filling in. I think Landon Collins had a good first game against the Cowboys, and he's got a huge role in expectations for him this year. Landon Collins is a guy who's really got to step up for them and have a big year. And then Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, again, I don't think you could find a ton of plays last year where you could really isolate him and say, look at all this play that he made. But I think in week 1 against the Cowboys, he looked very sharp. Let's switch to the offensive line for the Giants for a minute, Rob, because I think when you look at the offensive line for the Giants collectively, this is a very young group of guys. I mean, you've guys like Justin Pugh who've been there. You've new guys there like Eric Flowers, who was their first-round draft pick this year out of Miami, who they have big expectations for. When you look at this Giants offensive line, it only seems like a couple seasons ago where that was one of the big cruxes of this Giants team. Now you look at how young they are and how they're developing together. Do you think that this is a line that can continue to develop and be in it for the long haul with how young they are?
Oh, most definitely, Joe. You got to give it maybe the next two, maybe to next year also, give it to them. But they're going to slowly develop and be able to protect Manning. If Manning has the protection around him, we know what he could do. He'll win big games. He has Odell Beckham Jr. Once Victor Cruz comes back, that's going to be a dynamic duo out there. But I think that offensive line is slowly going to grow. Once they grow, the Giants are going to be a tough team to beat.
There's no question. I think, again, it is incredibly painful coming off of the first loss that you had the other day, but I still think you could take a lot of positives away. Clearly on the Jets front, there are a lot of positives, and even with the loss for the Giants, I think there are some things that show that it could go in the right direction, and we'll certainly see against Atlanta and against Washington. But that wraps up the New York media outlet, football, whatever you want to call it, first segment. We'll re-gear, be right back, so don't go anywhere.